strings are the tendons, and when I pull one of them, the finger moves. And I can do this for each one of the fingers individually, and I can also do it for the entire hand. So we're going to learn how to make a robotic hand using your own hand. Okay? So let me show you how this works. Do you notice how on each one of the fingers here there's a straw of a different color? And do you also notice how there are little notches cut out of each straw? The wider you make the notches, the more your fingers are going to curl. If I had only made little tiny slits, the finger would only go up this much. But because I made these deep cuts, the finger is able to curl just like my real fingers curl, just like that. Now, on the back are rubber bands, and this is what brings the finger back to its original position after you've released the tendon here, the string on the bottom. Okay? To make the robotic hand, you're going to need some very simple materials. You're going to need 5 rubber bands. You're going to need 5 feet of string. You're also going to need 5 straws. Make sure they're the flexible, bendy kind. Okay, just like that. And you'll also need a hot glue gun, scissors, a razor with some adult help, and a lighter with some adult help if the string you're using is nylon, the kind that frays. That way you can seal up the edges. If you're just using regular kite string or yarn, you don't need the lighter. Okay? And you'll also need a pen. You'll need a piece of cardboard. This is just a scrap piece of cardboard I cut off of a box. And you're going to need a grown-up hand. Now, you can do smaller hands if you want, but they tend to be harder to get to work right. So get a nice, large, grown-up size hand, and I'll show you what we do next. So your first step is to get a hand and place it on your cardboard and trace with your pen all the way around the hand. It doesn't have to be precise. You just want the general shape of the hand. You go all the way down. Okay. So your next step is to cut this out. And this is where you can use a razor with some adult help, or you can use your scissors. Now, once you have your hand cut out, it may look something like this, where some of the fingers are so close together that you didn't actually have room to cut between them. Don't worry about that. We'll take care of that in a moment. If some of your fingers have these little tips on them because you cut it with a razor, go ahead and round them so they look more like a human hand. So now that you have your hand, what we're going to do is actually take a look at our own hand and make some marks on this hand. One of the things I want you to notice is when you look at your own hand, do you notice how you have segments? We're going to put those on our hand as well. Okay, so kind of just measure up and draw a light line across where your segments are. So your hand probably looks something like this. Did you notice that the lowest line that you drew was probably below where you cut? That's because the humans have a web in their hands. Now, normally you think of webs like duck feet, right? But we have a web too, and it's the area from where the fingers, the skin stops here, to where the fingers actually separate inside, which is here. So from here to here is a web. That's what's shown here. So what we're going to do is get our scissors and extend the line and cut the fingers apart all the way to that line. Okay. Now if you notice when you curl your finger, it curls right here as well. And so we want to duplicate that in our model. Okay? Alright. So did you notice how the thumb moves? Now this was really interesting. The thumb has a segment here and it moves, and here it moves, but then this part also moves. So how do we do that on our model? So I drew a segment here, and then this is my line that I'll show you how to deal with later. This is for the movement of the entire thumb as it does this motion. Okay? So make sure you've got that line in there as well. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to pick out your straws, okay, and you're going to open up the flexible part, just like that. Kind of open it up for all of them. Okay, so what we're going to do is line up the bottom of the straw with the bottom of the hand, And you want the bendy part here, the accordion part we just stretched out, to be kind of in the middle of your hand. So you want it to be about there. Okay, so if this is the distance from your wrist to where the pinky, the bottom segment of the pinky is, we want the bendy part to be kind of halfway in between, and we're going to line it up like this. Okay, so that's the bendy part is going to be right there. And then we're going to get our hot glue gun and glue this down. So run a stripe of glue all the way down your cardboard. And then we're going to reinforce it by running another stripe of glue down one side and the other. Just like that. We're going to do this for each one of the fingers. So take your next one, and we're going to line it up down here. And it's okay if they extend out the top here. We'll cut those off later. Okay. So for our next one, I'm going to put a stripe of glue down and press it down. And then I'm going to reinforce it with an extra stripe of glue on each side of the straw that I can reach. If these are too close down here, don't worry about getting in there to get more glue. Just do it on the outside. Okay, and then we're going to do our third finger. And then don't forget to reinforce it. You want these straws to be in the middle of the finger. Okay, and then we'll do the index finger. Now the thumb is going to be a little bit different. We're actually going to hang this off the edge a little bit. Here's the flexible portion in here. Okay, so the flexible portion is a little bit lower down. And then we're going to mount it with glue. Okay, and then we can trim off that edge. Okay. And then flip it over, and you can trim off the straws. They look like long fingernails, huh? Okay. So for this next part, we're going to do some notching. Each finger and the thumb has 3 notches in the straw, and that's what enables you to curl up each finger and thumb, just like that. If you didn't have the notches, you can actually try it without notches, and at first it won't move, but if you just cut just a single slit, it won't move very much, because this space allows the finger to move all the way up, and it actually stops moving when one edge hits the other edge. So you need that gap in there. Okay, so that's what we're going to do next. We glued these down first because it's a lot easier to notch the straws when they're securely attached to something. So how do we notch these? Okay, do you see where the lines that we drew on the cardboard are? That's where the center of your notch is going to go. So take your razor blade and hold it at a 45 angle, and carefully, don't put your hands here because it's easy to slip. Move your hands over here. And carefully pierce the straw and then slice downwards, and then come in from the other side at a 45. And here's the notch that we just made. Let's make another one. Come in at a 45 on both sides. Okay, and there's our second notch, and then here's our third notch near the tip. Okay, just like that. Okay, and go ahead and do that for all the segments. Now for the thumb, you want to notch here and here, and then I'll show you where the third one is. Okay, so for the thumb, you want to notch it right above the flexible tubing, which is down here. Okay, so I have a notch here, here, and here. All right. We're going to flip the hand over. Don't try to bend them yet because we haven't scored it on the other side. Okay, so you want to hold the hand kind of at side view. And do you see here where the purple notches are? That's where I want to score across the back of the hand. So I'm just going to kind of visualize it here, then flip it over. And I'm going to cut only through the top layer of the cardboard. This way, it's still attached, but it's like a hinge. Do you see that? Okay, so here's my second notch. Look at it from the side, kind of note where it is, and then score it. Only pierce that top layer, just like that. Okay, and we're going to do the last one, which is here. And score it, just like that. Okay, so your finger should be flexible. Go ahead and do that for all of the fingers. So when you're cutting and scoring and bending, make sure that you also look at your own hand and see how it moves so you can know exactly where to cut and how to make your model to make it as realistic as you can. For example, notice that the thumb moves differently than the fingers. So the fingers curl in like this. The thumb curls for 2 segments, but then rotates in, just like our thumbs do. Okay? So take time to study your own hand and see how it translates to this cardboard model. Okay, so now what we need to do is add the tendons, and then we're pretty much done. So cut your string into 5 equal pieces, and you're also going to need to cut open each one of your rubber bands. Now, if you used string like I did, this is actually nylon rope, I'm going to have to very carefully, without burning it, just pass it through a flame a few times until the nylon starts to melt, and then it won't fray. Okay, do that for each one of the ends. So what we're going to do is you're going to take one rubber band and one rope and tie a knot with both of them together. Okay, and then before you tighten it, move the knot as much as you can to the end of the rope. Okay, so it looks like this. And then pull the rubber band tight. Make sure it doesn't slip through. Okay, so you've just connected a rubber band to a piece of string. The other end of that string goes through your straws, comes out the bottom. The other end of the rubber band gets hot glued onto the back of the hand. So what you want to do is when you're hot gluing this, give a little bit of stretch, but not so much that you're pulling this out of the straw. Okay, that's going to be too tight. So what you want to do is put the knot at the top of the fingertip or the thumb tip here, and just put a little bit of tension in it. Add some hot glue to the cardboard, and then hold it in place until it dries. This is going to give you the tension you need to return your hand to the original position. Now, if you notice that the natural position of your hands is to be curled anyway, so if you don't want to use the rubber band, you don't have to. You can actually skip that step and simply tie a knot in the end of your string and then thread it through. Okay, and that would work as well. Okay, but I'm going to continue to put the rubber bands on the back. After you've got rubber bands attached to each string, go ahead and thread the string through the straws for each one of the fingers, and then flip it over and attach the rubber bands to the back. The rubber bands may not all line up perfectly with each other. How much rubber band you have back here is going to depend on how much you used inside your knot on the fingertip. This model is more accurate than you think. Do you see the strings down here? These are your tendons. Did you know that your tendons are not actually in your hand, but they're down here, just like the strings are down here? In fact, if you lay your arm on the table and you push, you can get your fingers to curl, just like with the robotic hand. So go ahead and try your hand and see how it works. Your fingers should curl all the way in if you made your notches large enough. Now, if you find like this one has a rubber band that slips off the finger, that means that you need to move it over more on the back. So peel it up and find a new location to attach it to. And then you'll find that it stays centered on the finger.